It was the kind of story no one saw coming. A young millionaire, fresh out of college, on top of the world, making his mark in a cutthroat business, living the dream most people only talk about. He had the money, the looks, the cars, the mansion, everything that many would kill for. But despite all the success, there was one part of his life that didn't quite fit the narrative. One decision that made him the target of ridicule, gossip, and mockery. You see, this millionaire's life took an unexpected turn when he crossed paths with a homeless woman, a woman with no future, no hope, and seemingly no place in the world. And somehow, despite the vast difference in their lives, he found himself drawn to her. Most people would have called it a mistake or worse, an act of foolishness. After all, he was living a life many could only dream of, and she was barely surviving on the streets. But there was something about her that he couldn't ignore. Her strength, despite everything life had thrown at her, and the way her eyes told stories of struggles and survival. They say love can come in the most unexpected of places, but what about when it's met with judgment, anger, and confusion? This is where the story truly begins. Their relationship, or whatever you might want to call it, became a hot topic in the media. The world watched, laughed, and pointed fingers. How could he? People asked. Doesn't he know his worth? Why her? It was almost as if the world couldn't believe that someone who had it all would choose to be with someone who had nothing. But they didn't see what he saw, the resilience in her heart, the wisdom she carried, and the way her presence changed his perspective on life. And then came the twist. She found out she was pregnant. The shockwaves this revelation sent through the lives of both of them were beyond anything either of them had anticipated. His friends and family didn't take kindly to the news. "What are you going to do now?" they asked. "You're about to throw away everything for a homeless woman and a baby no one will support." But he didn't back down. He stood by her, even when the world turned its back on them. Years later, though, the story didn't end like anyone thought it would. No, it wasn't just a story of a young man being ridiculed for his decisions, or a tale of a woman living on the streets with a child she couldn't care for. The plot thickened, and what seemed like an ill-fated decision turned into a life-changing journey for both of them. But how did it all unfold? Did the young millionaire's choice prove to be the worst mistake of his life, or did it lead to something even greater than anyone could have imagined? And now, you're left wondering, what happened after that? How did the world and their lives change in the years that followed? The truth behind this unlikely pairing, the challenges they faced, and the eventual twists that no one saw coming will leave you on the edge of your seat. Because what happens next will challenge everything you thought you knew about success, love, and destiny. Stay tuned to find out how this story continues, and how the young millionaire and the homeless woman changed the world in a way no one could have predicted. As the weeks passed after the announcement of her pregnancy, the pressure on the young millionaire, Alex, grew unbearable. His friends, who had always admired him for his business acumen and taste in luxury, began to question his judgment. They couldn't understand why he was so insistent on staying with this woman, a woman they saw as nothing more than a stranger, a homeless figure who had wandered into his life for reasons they couldn't fathom. His family wasn't any more supportive. His parents, who had spent their entire lives building a legacy, were adamant that he was making a mistake. "You're throwing everything away," his mother said, her voice trembling with worry. "You could be with anyone. Why her?" It was a question that seemed to haunt him at every turn. But Alex knew deep down that it wasn't about appearances. It wasn't about what the world thought was right. There was something deeper, something raw, that connected him to Lily, the woman he had met on the street. Lily had a history, a tough one. She wasn't always homeless. In fact, she had been a bright young woman with dreams of becoming a teacher. But life had other plans. Her family had fallen apart after a tragic accident, and she was left alone, struggling to find a place in a world that didn't seem to have space for her. By the time Alex met her, she had already seen the darker side of life. She wasn't just some random woman living on the streets. She was a survivor. And despite everything, she had a strength that Alex admired. She didn't complain about her circumstances. She didn't look for pity. She simply lived day by day. And maybe that's what drew him to her more than anything. She wasn't like the women he'd been surrounded by in his world. She was real. But as the pregnancy progressed, so did the challenges. It wasn't just about the judgment from people who didn't know them. It wasn't even about the mockery from the media, which had a field day with the news of a millionaire getting a homeless woman pregnant. It was the uncertainty. Alex had spent his life building his empire, taking calculated risks and making sure everything he did made sense. But this didn't fit into his carefully planned life. He had no idea how to raise a child, especially one with a woman like Lily, who had nothing. They moved in together, but life wasn't easy. Lily's pregnancy was difficult, and there were moments when Alex wondered if he had made the right choice. The small apartment they were living in was far from glamorous, and there were days when Lily couldn't even bring herself to get out of bed. The constant reminders of her past were there, memories of loss, of survival, and sometimes they overwhelmed her. She would get silent for days, and Alex couldn't figure out how to break through the walls she had built. But then, just when things seemed like they were at their lowest point, something incredible happened. Lily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, an innocent little being who had no idea of the challenges her parents faced. In that moment, when Alex held his daughter for the first time, something shifted. All the doubts, all the worries about the future seemed to disappear. He looked at the tiny face in his arms and knew, deep in his heart, that this was his purpose now. Yet, the challenges didn't disappear. They only grew more intense. As the baby grew, so did the pressure from Alex's family and friends. They couldn't understand why he was still with Lily. They wanted him to cut ties, to walk away before it was too late. "You can't raise a child like this," they would tell him. "This woman will hold you back. She's a reminder of everything you've worked to escape." But every time they pushed, Alex pushed back harder. He was determined to make it work. He was determined to prove everyone wrong. The world continued to mock him. The tabloids ran stories, calling him everything from the fool millionaire to the man who threw it all away. But as time went on, something began to shift. Alex and Lily, against all odds, found their own rhythm. They learned to support each other, to raise their daughter with love and care. Lily, who had once felt invisible, started to blossom. She found a job, something part-time, but it was a start. Alex, too, found a new sense of purpose. His business ventures became less about wealth and more about creating something meaningful, something that would last. But just when they thought things were settling into place, life threw them yet another curveball. Alex's business partner, someone he had trusted for years, betrayed him. The company they had built together was on the verge of collapse. All the hard work, the sacrifices, everything they had fought for was now at risk. Alex felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had to save his company, but he couldn't do it alone. This was the moment, the breaking point. Everything he had worked for, everything he had built, was slipping through his fingers. The pressure was unbearable. His family still didn't understand, and his friends were ready to walk away. It seemed like the world had decided to break him. But Lily, despite her own struggles, stood by him. She reminded him of what really mattered, the love they shared, the life they were building together. And for the first time in months, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. They had already overcome so much. So why should they stop now? But could Alex save everything he had worked for? Could he keep his company from falling apart and provide for his family? Or was he about to lose everything all over again? The tension was at its peak, and the next decision Alex made could change everything. Would he be able to rise above the chaos, or was he destined to lose it all? Stay with us, because this story isn't over yet. The final twist is just around the corner, and no one will see it coming. The days after Alex's business partner betrayed him were filled with sleepless nights and frantic phone calls. He spent hours on end trying to salvage what little was left of his company. But as the weeks dragged on, the pressure only intensified. His creditors were knocking at the door, his investors were growing impatient, and his once promising empire was crumbling before his eyes. All the sacrifices, all the years of hard work, felt like they were slipping away. But Lily, despite the chaos, never wavered. She stood by his side every step of the way, offering him support when he needed it the most. She had always believed in him, even when the world doubted him. She reminded him of their daughter, of the life they had built together, and most importantly, of the strength they had shown in the face of adversity. For the first time in a long while, Alex found himself looking at things through her eyes, not as the millionaire businessman, but as a man who had everything to lose and everything to gain. And then came the breakthrough. In a final desperate move, Alex contacted his old network, people who had helped him build his business in the early days. It was a long shot, but it was all he had left. To his surprise, they came through. Not only did they offer to buy out his failing company, but they also gave him a chance to start fresh. This time, with a new vision, they recognized the value of what Alex had built, but they saw something even more valuable: his resilience, his ability to bounce back from failure, and the way he had held onto his values, even when everything was falling apart. With this new opportunity, Alex managed to get his company back on track. He rebuilt from the ground up, not just for the sake of profit, but with a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't want to be just a millionaire anymore. He wanted to be a man who had overcome the odds, someone who had built something meaningful, not just for himself, but for his family and his community. But it wasn't just his business that flourished. As time passed, Lily also found her footing. She started her own small initiative to help homeless women, using her own experiences to empower others who were struggling. She became a beacon of hope for many, proving that the past didn't define you, but how you moved forward did. Together, Alex and Lily became a team that not only faced challenges head-on but turned those challenges into opportunities for growth. Years later, when people looked at Alex and Lily, they saw a story of redemption, love, and resilience. The young millionaire who had once been laughed at for his choices had built something far more valuable than money: a family, a life of purpose, and a future that no one could take away. His decision to stand by Lily, to embrace the unexpected, had proven to be the best one he had ever made. In the end, the real success wasn't in the wealth or the business deals. It was in the love they shared, the life they created, and the way they showed the world that no matter where you come from or what you've been through, you have the power to rewrite your story. And as for the doubters and the critics, they had long since disappeared, forgotten in the wake of a love that had defied the odds. The story of the young millionaire and the homeless woman had come full circle, and in the process, it had changed the course of their lives forever. So what's the takeaway? It's simple. Never let the world define who you are or what you can achieve. The most unexpected paths often lead to the greatest rewards. And sometimes, love, real, raw, unfiltered love, can be the key to unlocking a future you never thought possible.